This is the story of the First Fleet, prisoners who built a nation. When most people think of the early European settlers of Australia, they imagine a dusty outpost of rugged individualists searching for gold. But that's not how it went down. The first Europeans to settle in Australia were convicts, prisoners who had been sentenced to hard labor in a penal colony on the other side of the world. You see, during the late 18th century, Britain's prisons were so overcrowded that they had to build new facilities to house all the convicts. So they turned to Australia, a large and largely unknown landmass that the British claimed as part of their empire. In 1788, the First Fleet, an armada of 6 ships carrying more than 1,000 convicts, and a few hundred Marines and officers set sail from Portsmouth, England for Botany Bay in Australia. Life for the convicts was brutal. Ships were overcrowded and unsanitary, and many prisoners died on the journey. When they finally arrived in Botany Bay, they found it uninhabited. There were no towns or settlements, just miles of wilderness. The prisoners were forced to build their own homes and farms out of the resources available to them in the wild, and they faced starvation as they struggled to grow crops in the unfamiliar land. The First Fleet also brought with them diseases that devastated Aboriginal populations who'd never even seen a European. The convicts were not the only ones suffering. The Aboriginal people who'd lived in the area for tens of thousands of years were brutally dispossessed and murdered as the settlers took over their lands. Despite the hardship, the First Fleet established a settlement that would become known as Sydney. Over the next few decades, more settlers arrived in Australia, and the colony grew. The discovery of gold in the mid-19th century turned Australia into a sought-after destination and led to a population boom. Today, Australia is home to over 26 million people, most of whom are descendants of the convicts and settlers who came after them. But this is a difficult history to grapple with. The arrival of the First Fleet marked the beginning of the colonization of Australia and the dispossession of the Aboriginal people. The settlers, including those in the First Fleet, had a devastating impact on the environment and on the indigenous population. It's a painful part of Australia's past that we can't ignore. In recent years, there's been a growing movement to acknowledge and commemorate the history of the First Fleet and the impact it has had on Australia and its people. In 2018, a new national apology was issued to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people for the mistreatment they suffered at the hands of the colonists. And there are growing calls for Australia to become a republic and to replace the current flag, which features the Union Jack with a design that reflects the country's Aboriginal heritage. But despite the pain and suffering caused by the First Fleet, it's also important to remember that Australia wouldn't be the same without them. The arrival of the convicts in 1788 led to the establishment of one of the most prosperous and egalitarian nations in the world. And while we should never forget the brutality of the colonial era, we should also celebrate the diversity and multiculturalism that make Australia such a unique and welcoming place today. So what do you think? How should Australia move forward? Should they hold on to their colonial past, or should they try to create a new identity for themselves? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.